You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health.
It only takes one step, twist, or crunch to know something doesn't feel right. Essentia Health's orthopedic and sports medicine team gets you back to doing what you love with commitment, resilience, intention. We're here to keep you moving forward. Visit essentiahealth.org to learn more about orthopedics and sports medicine, like nowhere else.
Hello and welcome to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health. I'm Matt Wellens, the Bulldogs hockey beat writer at the Duluth News Tribune and the Rink Live.
And I'm Zach Schneider, the television voice of UMD Hockey on My 9 Sports.
Welcome to part 2 of the two-episode season 5 finale of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. If you missed part 1, stop listening. Go back in your podcast feed and check out that episode. You can skip the part where Bruce talks about food, that's fine, but go back and listen to the rest of the episode. Then come back to this one. As I hinted, joining us to help wrap up the 2022-23 men's and women's hockey seasons, as well as look ahead to 2023-24, it's the voice of the Bulldogs on KDAL, Bruce Ciskie.
The people that run the radio operations at a different school have tried to call me and tamper with me, but I'm still not in the transfer portal.
All right. Again, if you just for some reason refuse to listen to the first episode, we're recording this on Thursday, May 20th, or not March. May. We're recording this on Thursday, March 23rd. It is now 1:21 p.m. Isaac Howard entered the transfer portal literally like minutes before we started recording the first episode, part 1. No update as of right now. Isaac Howard has not picked a new location. Anyways, this episode we're going to talk about that in this one here. We even got someone slipped in a question while we were recording the last one. It's after the deadline, but we're going to get it in here because this episode's dedicated to all you, the listeners who've been with us all season. We took questions via email and Twitter, however you wanted to get them to us. And we're going to try and get to as many as we can. The first one, we're just going to dive into the transfer portal. Sam Brady asks, how active will the Bulldogs be in the transfer portal? Guys, what do you think? When we look at this is for both the men and the women. I think the women are going to be way more active than the men, though maybe the Isaac Howard to the portal changes that. The women really don't have a choice. They only have 5 recruits coming in at the moment. I believe it's 5. So they're in need of forwards. On the women's side, maybe a third string goaltender. Did confirm Blanca Skadova cannot redshirt this year and come back to college for what would be her 6th year, I guess. The men need at least one defenseman. I mean, what do you guys think? What should UMD? We'll start with the men. What do they need to do in the transfer portal?
I think a left shot defenseman at the minimum 1, if not 2. They lost 2. They have at this point nobody coming in on the defensive side. So could you go find a developmental prospect that could be a 7th, 8th defenseman next season? Sure, you could do that. But I think at the minimum, you need one guy that's got some experience playing Division I hockey, and preferably a left shot. Just the way that the roster looks right now. And frankly, with Howard leaving, I'm not unconvinced that they don't need to try to find somebody up front. Is it a pressing need? Not really. And you could argue that based on the way that the roster was handled this season, that the coaching staff is all in on developing these young forwards, you don't want to block anybody. So I can understand if they don't, but if there's a guy out there that intrigues them, that makes sense from a fit standpoint, I could see that move being made. I could easily justify that move being made. But I think defenseman has got to be the number 1 priority, I would think.
Yeah, some of what the men do on the forward side depends on what they decide they want to do with Jason Shagabe, right, from Warroad. Yeah. If he's going to come in, maybe he fills that role, and you say we're going to go through some growing pains with him, but we do have, as we talked about in episode number 1, some high-end guys that we expect can score goals for this team. And if they do their job, maybe Jason Shagabe doesn't have to come in and you know, be a 20, 30-point guy. He can play on the third or fourth line and really get his feet wet and do it the way that Scott Stanlin would prefer. But on the defensive side, they really don't have that luxury. Whether it's a left shot or a right shot, they need a guy who can eat some minutes. And Derek Daschke, maybe didn't have the season that we all were hoping when he came in from Miami. I think he had some ups and downs to his year as a fifth year, but he ate minutes. he did do that. And, UMD right now doesn't have the guys on the back end who are used to playing that. So you lose a Dashke, you lose a Kaiser, guys who are playing in every situation, playing a lot of minutes. And so it'd be preferable if it was a left shot guy, but even if it's a right shot guy, if he can play 25 minutes a game, get him on the team. I don't know who's in the portal right now, but that's what they got to be looking for, is a guy who's going to be in your top 4.
Isaac Howard to the portal.
Oh, can he play defense?
No.
For UMD?
No.
Oh, well, he doesn't count.
One of the questions, Max Veach asked how many attractive left shot D are in the portal, and
I'm not sure what their looks have to do with it.
And the Bulldogs can get all of them. If you go to the rinklive.com, we got both men's and women's transfer portals up there. I don't want to run through the names of those lists here, because by the time we start spouting off names, they could be gone and committed elsewhere. Some new, more attractive names could hit the portal as well once the NCAA tournament gets through here in the regional round and such. There are a couple IVs in the NCAA tournament. Those players don't come back to their school for a 5th year. So Harvard, Cornell, there could be some players coming from there in the portal as well. I think for context, the men, they do have options. So right now they have Zam Plant and Anthony Mangini. Mangini and Plant are actually both with the Fargo Force now. Sam got traded from Chicago to Fargo. They are both signed for next season. It was hinted that maybe Zam could go back and play juniors another year, but I would think with the Isaac Howard news that he's in the portal, Zam's coming in next year. Matthew Perkins is another guy that's not currently signed, but is another option. He's done pretty well with the Youngstown Phantoms. He was a high scorer in, I believe it was the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. We talked about Jason Shagaby. They have options. And Scott, he builds through. He's a draft and develop guy.
Yep.
He's a recruit and develop guy. I don't think we're going to see him because Isaac Howard decides to leave. He's going to panic, and I need to now go get a top free agent from the transfer portal. I don't see him doing that. I still think they probably means Perkins is coming in for sure. He had 59 points for the Humboldt Broncos in 21-22. So there's a guy, and he's got 38 points this year in the USHL for a not great Youngstown Phantoms team. So there's a good option. When we look at Ben Steves, a veteran junior player, that's probably where you're going to get more point production than, bringing in. We just saw with Derek Dashke, just because you produce points at one school doesn't mean it's going to happen at another. So,
and I think culture fit is going to matter here. And I'm not trying to dog Miami, but let's be honest. That's been a losing program here for a while. And you can see another exodus of guys in the portal here this week for Miami. And you hate it. I like Chris Bergeron. You hate it for him because I know he's working as hard as he can to get that thing rebuilt and get them back where they're relevant again. But I think if the Bulldogs, and this is the men and the women, to be honest, if they're going to be portal shopping, they're not just going to go and take anybody. I'm not saying that Scott did that with Derek Dashke or Casey Gilling, but I think they're going to be careful of making sure that the player or players they get is a good fit in every facet you can imagine. Yeah,
and we talk about the portal shopping. The women, I'm going to run through their recruits here. They kind of do have to go portal shopping.
Yeah.
And this was this is kind of planned out for the women. We saw Mora those first few years she was bringing in. She did back-to-back years of 10 freshmen, and they finally just cycled through all those 10 freshmen this year because Ashton Bell and Naomi Rogi are basically the program for 6 years, and they brought back all those 5th years. This is a chance for them to level out. They're going to go after some 5th year seniors. I was told probably by the time you listen to this podcast, there's a good chance the UMD women have already landed one. There's some big names in the women's portal right now. Olympian Kayla Barnes, though she's a defenseman. There's Boston College is losing a couple players. There's some players from out east that are looking to play for winning programs that are entering the portal. The women just have 2 defensemen signed. And again, hopefully by the time you listen to this podcast, you're going to see a new one that's currently not on the list. She's out of Sweden that they're adding along with Quinn Dunkel. They got 2 forwards in Grace Sedura and Peyton Holloway. And then we've mentioned in part 1, the most high profile recruit coming in to women's, might be all women's hockey this next season from she played a little bit in the Quebec Major Junior League. Eve Gascon, I believe is how we say her name. We'll learn that when she gets here. But the women do have to go portal shopping, specifically at forward. And it's going to be interesting to see how Mora navigates that, right? Because I think she's another coach that, they struck gold with Elizabeth Giguere, but ideally you'd like to, recruit and develop.
Yeah, but this year, this is one where she needs to swing for the fences again. And those big names that you mentioned, maybe there's a couple more to come. We don't know on the women's side yet. If they can hit one home run and maybe get a couple singles or a double in there, but they need somebody that can replace what they're losing. And we saw that from last year to this year for UMD. You lose Anna Klein, you lose Elizabeth Shiger, who was the home run that they hit in the transfer portal that year. It's tough to replace goals. And when you look, we talked a little bit about episode number 1 about what's missing when you compare UMD to the teams that were in this year's Frozen Four. Well, the answer that jumps out is 20 goal scorers.
Yeah.
3 of the 4 teams in the Frozen Four this year had at least 3 20-goal scorers. 2 of them had 4. The only one without a 20-goal scorer on the roster was Wisconsin, who I know won the national title. It was the first time of their 7 that they've done it without a 20-goal scorer.
It's an outlier.
And they had 2 at 19.
Right.
So they were pretty close, right? UMD needs to try its best to get one of those big names to come here and then supplement with some depth players, because they do just need the bodies. But their biggest splash would be bringing in somebody who's going to be on that top line, like an Elizabeth Shiger.
Yeah, I would agree.
Now, I will say one of the misconceptions of the portal is that there's a bunch of 20-goal scorers just sitting out there. Like, you can say, hey, we need a high-end left-shot defenseman, but there's no guarantee there is a good left-shot high-end defenseman in there. And sometimes what happens, we see this in pro sports, that an average player, all of a sudden, if they are the best person in free agency, all of a sudden they look like they're an MVP player, Kirk Cousins. And you don't want to get stuck into a scenario like that where you are reaching. I'm thinking of another school in Division I men's college hockey that is struggling to develop at a certain position, and each year seems to be going into the transfer portal looking for the best goalie, and well, they're doing it for a 3rd straight year. So go ahead and do the math on that.
That sentence became less and less veiled as it went on.
It really did.
If you can't figure out that puzzle,
I'm going to be vague about this.
Just an example, and
then I'm naming names at the end.
There aren't a lot of big. You're not going to see a lot of huge scores in both the men's and women's transfer portals. The top players, what you're getting in there are guys who maybe didn't live up to their expectations. Red Savage in Miami, who now quickly went to Michigan State. Isaac Howard. We think he's going to be a good player, but he didn't meet expectations this year, and now he's in the transfer portal hoping to go somewhere that he can rise to that level. So
I will say it's more likely to find that type of player in the women's portal than the men's portal.
Right, it is. Kayla Barnes, an Olympian, played for Boston College. She's the biggest name, I'd say, right now in the women's portal. You are more likely to find Elizabeth Giger in the women's portal. So, but again, some of the top scorers they're all aging out. There were a lot of really good 5th-year seniors in women's college hockey this last year. So it'll be interesting to see. The women, I think, are going to be more active than the men. Even though Isaac Howard left, don't hold your breath that the Bulldogs are going to go find another big name forward, because they have some young guys that have a lot of potential that I think can. Again, I know Jason Shagaby is the name everyone in Minnesota is familiar with, but I wouldn't discount a Matthew Perkins.
Yeah,
either.
And again, you don't want to block these young guys. You can
like another school did.
This is not. I was going to say it actually, but Matt said it for me, so never mind. I'm just going to move on.
Speaking of veiled threats at other schools, that leads us into this next segment. Question from Jeremy Stahl. He emailed me. It's a common question we've got on Twitter, and we've kind of attacked on Twitter, but Twitter's an awful place to get into a complex subject. It's an awful place to get into any subject.
I was going to say, why, not just complex.
In general. Jeremy wants to know about recruiting philosophies of both Scott Sandlin and Maura Kroll, specifically why they have so few recruits committed for next season and future seasons compared to other schools who have long lists at the moment. And Jeremy brings up, would it make more sense to have a few more, not an excessive amount, but a few more names in the pipeline to slightly reduce the stress of having to fill so many spots? I think I kind of already covered, like, Maura Kroll, why you'd think when you're losing this many 5th years, you would have a stockpile of players. But first off, I think if you look at all the team, like, one, I heard that this wasn't as deep of a recruiting class coming in. The class of 2023 for women's hockey wasn't as deep necessarily in recruits. Also, like, schools just didn't really have a lot of time to plan for bringing back 10 to 12 5th-year players, because when you first started recruiting, this wasn't a thing until the pandemic that you were going to have these players around for an extra year. So I know Maura's let a couple recruits go, lost a couple recruits because she decided, I'm bringing back these 5th-year players instead of bringing you in, and those kids went to other schools. Women's college hockey, they don't have the luxury of, well, I can go play juniors for 2 to 3 years and come in later. But in general, the philosophy of both Scott and Maura is, if we're offering you a scholarship, if we're offering you a spot in our program, it's because we have a spot for you. And we have an idea of when you're coming in, then in the next, whatever, a 2 to maybe 3 year window. And it's not, they don't over recruit. You know, some of these schools have long lists because right before they changed the rules, one thing people got to remember now is you can't commit till your before your junior year of high school. So that's going to start reducing everyone's recruit list. But some of these schools loaded up on recruits. I mean, Wyatt Kaiser told us on the podcast here, the reason his sister Madison actually committed before he did, even though she's younger, is because the Gophers jumped to get her committed to get an early commitment out of her before that was illegal. So I don't know. You guys want to expand on it? I know it frustrates the fans. They want to know why we're going to not name certain schools, why some schools have these long drawn out recruiting lists, but a lot of those kids don't end up at those schools.
One thing to think about is that different things work for different programs, right? And when UMD on the men's and women's side, they use the term, and I think it's loosely used because they and we, certainly not us, are going to accuse any other programs of anything, but they use the term ethical recruiting. And they mean that in the sense that, exactly as Matt said, when you get a verbal from a player that they have a spot in your program, that you've got a plan for them. You're not going to just have this arsenal of recruits to pick and choose from, when the time gets there. And the other thing that I'll throw out here, as somebody who doesn't spend nearly as much time on recruiting as Matt and Bruce, we were joking before this podcast that I'll worry about the roster when it comes out in September, and that's kind of the approach I get to take to it with my role. Yeah. I'll worry about whose names and numbers I need to know when the roster comes out and is finalized. But these guys do a great job throughout the spring and summer, the third season as it's been termed. But Scott and Maura are good at this. So I am not going to sit here and criticize, or second guess their recruiting standards or their tactics until the results on the ice for more than 1 year warrant us to do so. Like, they have proven that they're good at this. They know more about this than we do. And I don't know if that's an acceptable answer to the fan base, but only they can really reveal, the true strategy behind what they're doing. And of course, they're not going to do that, but it's something that, when you watch the product on the ice and you see some of these players who are here for 4 and now for 5 years, the way that they develop, I'll trust those two and what they have in their heads and their assistant coaching staffs more than anything that we could put together in this room.
Ethical recruiting, you said it. Again, I'm not going to throw stones because what other programs do, they're not breaking rules. We're not saying that, but there may be some unwritten rules that they're not necessarily following. And that is, if somebody is verbally committed to go somewhere, I'm not going to talk to them. And I know there have been multiple instances where players have had to formally decommit from their previous commitment before the UMD coaching staff would even talk to them. Like, you've got to call this coach and decommit. Tell them you're not coming. I'm not going to talk to you otherwise. That's not how we operate. And that's fine because, again, it works for them, as Zach said. It's worked for them very, very well. So I'm not going to question it, but they're not – that's just – they don't over-recruit. They don't tamper, and that's fine. They're going to try to do things the way that they do them. And again, like Zach said, it's worked for UMD. So I think people just need to take a step back and understand that it's a competitive world. And just because other schools are doing things a certain way doesn't mean that UMD should be beholden to that. It might not work for UMD. It doesn't work for everybody that does it. I can promise you that.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing you just got to look at is when you looked at UMD's roster this year, they were looking to there was only a guarantee that 3 guys were moving on.
Yeah.
Jesse Jocks, Tanner Latteru, Derek Daschke. So you're not going to necessarily, Scott wants to bring back his 5th years. I don't think he loved having to tell a bunch of guys going into this past year that you couldn't come in. But he was committed to recruits and such, and he brought them in. He commits to a player and Maura, I think the same way. Maura could load up on this next recruiting class. We said it's not as deep of a class. She's only offering scholarships, and I think Scott does it too, offering scholarships to players that A, We want you and we know you're coming in. B, you're going to have a spot on this roster and play. And that's for 4 years. Maybe sometimes Scott looks at a player and says, all right, maybe they're going to only be here for 3. But hey, good thing he, planned for Noah. Noah Cates stayed for 4.
Yeah.
Wyatt Kaiser stayed for 3. Riley Tufte, when he came in as a first-round pick, I think everyone thought 1 to 2 years and gone, right? No, Riley stuck around for 3 years. It is. I think you guys nailed it. It's ethical recruiting. Mora only has, I look at next year and no, she doesn't have a lot of recruits signed for next year, but for the 2024-2025 season. But they're not losing a lot again as well. We still got 2 more years of the 5th-year senior thing and such. And, some of the women don't come back for a 5th year for educational reasons and such. So UMD doesn't have a lot of openings right now on its rosters. So Scott and Mora aren't going to overcommit, recruits that may not be able to come in.
Yeah. And I mean, it's tough because they're the servant of 2 masters, right? Because both Scott and Mora and their staffs want to do right by the program and right by the university, right by the fan base, and bring in the best players that they can. But they also want to do right by the players, right? And those players and that coach-player relationship, I think, is a lot closer than anybody probably gives it credit for. Those players trust those coaches a lot more and talk to them about a lot more than maybe we talk about throughout the course of a season. And so, Cole Spicer is a good example, right? He was recruited to North Dakota. They had some changes and there was a lot going on there. So this isn't, an indictment of North Dakota or the way they recruit, but he went back and they said, can you go back and play another year junior? He didn't want to go play another year junior. And so he decommits, ends up at UMD. That's stressful on the player. It's stressful on the program because now they got to fill his role for the next season. And so it's bad all the way around when things like that happen. And so the more that they can do to avoid things like that, we'll get into the Isaac Howard thing and the whole portal once you're here, because that's another thing entirely. But the more they can avoid decommitments, the better off everyone is.
Yeah, it's a long-term play. That in the short term, I know some fans are grinding their teeth and disappointed that UMD isn't winning the off season right now at this point. But these moves that they make aren't just about next season or the season after. It's the long-term reputation of the program. And hey, agents, parents, coaches in the lower levels of high school and junior hockey, they all know whose scholarship offer is ironclad, is worth something, and which school's scholarship offer don't exactly close the door, and you may want to listen to other offers if they come here. Have a backup plan just in case. So, all right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more recruiting and maybe even a little more transfer portal. You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health.
Greetings from Northlandia, a place to bring your curiosity, because here you will find curiosities. Whether it's a look inside the Northern Rail Train Car Inn or an introduction to Duluth's musical roboticist, Robot Rickshaw, we celebrate the region's distinctive people, places, and history. Each week, I'm joined by my fellow reporters who share the unique and fascinating stories that they discover while exploring the Northland. You can find new episodes of the Northlandia podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join us along this journey and discover the extraordinary stories that you just might miss if you're not in the right place at the right time, ready to step off the beaten path with no rush to return, here in Northlandia.
Hi, I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Explore Superior and Douglas County history with me on Archive Dive, a monthly podcast available at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. They're proud to be the team physicians for the UMD Bulldogs and provide sports medicine care to more than 25,000 student athletes in the community to ensure they can compete at the highest level while protecting their long-term health and athletic futures. Thanks to Essentia Health for their support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. I'm Matt Wellens, along with Zach Schneider and Bruce Ciskie. Next question, we're going to try and roll through as many as we can here. I'm sorry we're not going to get to everyone. AHA Bulldog on Twitter asks, and we kind of touched on this a little bit in part one. Is Adam Guyon coming next year? And if so, would it be Guyon, Stejskal, and Sandy? Matt Thiessen does have a COVID year, but not sure he wants to stick around. Yeah, we're not sure on the goaltending situation, but I think it's a highly likely we could see Adam Guyon next year at UMD. Ideally, his plan was to go play another year of juniors for the Green Bay Gamblers, but from what I've seen and heard, this kid looks ready to come to college right away.
I would just say Caden and Barrick will be damned. Trust an 18-year-old goaltender as your savior at your own peril. I do think a backup plan is important, whether that's Zach Stejskal or somebody. I don't know, but I would think that that's almost as important as Adam Guyon himself, because that's a big weight to put on somebody's shoulders. He's still relatively new to North America, and then you throw in you're going to be the number one goaltender on a major college program. That might be a little bit much in the first half. We've seen, Alex Stalock struggled his freshman year. We've seen this movie before. It's not always a plug and play. So if he comes in, I hope it's great. I just would be cautious about the expectation level.
Yeah, it's a losing bet to ever bet on Scott Sandlin and goaltenders who's going to get some run earlier in the year. But, if Adam Guyon is here, Zach Stejskal very well might get a chance at the beginning of the year to prove you're the guy. Like he did at the beginning of this year, which was thinly referenced at the beginning of the season. It never really came to that point where it was kind of a rotation all year, and Matt Thiessen had a stretch where he played more than Zach. But Stejskal very well might get a chance to say, hey, you're going to get 4 or 6 games at the beginning of the year. Go show me you're the number one guy, and we'll leave Guyon in the wings, let him learn. But if you're not, then we got a guy behind you who's going to push you and compete for minutes.
Yeah, I think, if Matt... I don't think Matt Thiessen's going to be brought back. That could change. The transfer portal, who knows? Zach Stejskal could decide he wants to go somewhere else. If an Adam Guyon, maybe he just needs a change of scenery, and that might be what's going on for Isaac Howard as well. Just a change of scenery sometimes can change things. Who knows? There could be a change. If Adam we saw this with the women last year, right? We thought we knew what the goaltending was going to look like, and then Emma Soderberg decides to come back for a 5th year, and JoJo transfers, and Holly Gruber transfers, and all of a sudden they're rebuilding there. Like, bring in Adam Guyon, and that could result in a chain reaction of both Matt and Zach saying, well, we're going to find somewhere else to go play as a starter. Goalie's a tough position. There's only so many that get to start and play. And, it worked out well for JoJo to go to St. Cloud and be part of that rebuild. And she's going to be there again next year and such. She played really well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the goaltender position. That's going to be a stay tuned spot. Scott's going to talk, I think, in between when these episodes air to the media, and he may still not have an answer at that spot there yet. So I've gotten this question a couple times, and this one comes from Biddy, who's a well-thought-out guy, so I'm going to do it. Scott Sandlin... Sometimes. Scott Sandlin missed some time because of health issues this season. Wasn't able to practice with the team. Knee issue, hip issue. He's actually scheduled to have hip surgery in April. The question has come up from multiple people, did that have an effect on the 2022-23 Bulldogs? And is that what made the team inconsistent? I'll start. No, that wasn't it. No. That wasn't it. Scott was still there on the ice. Yeah, he probably wasn't skating circles around anyone like he used to, but he was still there on the bench. He was still at every game. Some of the practices he took in from the stands. Can be good for a coach. It's another spot. No, I don't think that was the reason the Bulldog men were inconsistent at all. I don't think it was a distraction for Scott either. Painful one.
But yeah.
Painful. I believe it was a tough season for Suze to keep Scott in line. Probably the hardest injured person in the locker room to
imagine
to keep in line
like
there.
him.
But yeah, I don't think that had anything to do with it.
No, Zach's disposition had more of an impact on this team than Scott's injury issues.
What a world. There are people out there, and I think you referenced it maybe in episode 1, that think that Blake Behondi's injury didn't have an effect on his play, but then there's other people that think that Scott Sandlin's injury had an impact on the way the team. It's just, what a world that we live in.
It's great. Isn't it?
No, I mean, it had an effect on his attitude. A couple of those days were particularly painful, but other than that, I don't think much. much.
And his overall mobility, too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Scott did a valiant job. I think he did a valiant job. Scott probably was there more than he should have been this year. He waited a while to get that knee finally scoped, and he may not be done there. I mean,
you could tell he was in pain.
He was in pain.
Days.
Scott was Scott grinded through this season through injury. I don't think that was an issue at all. We're gonna try and wrap this up here. When are the schedules typically released for? We got it. This is the last question we absolutely have to get to. When are the schedules typically released for hockey teams? Well, the NCHC, I actually checked. NCHC is going to release theirs in April, so UMD won't release any part of theirs until then. The WCHA is usually around the same time, I think. Maybe we'll see them here yet, though it's getting toward the end of March. You're not going to see any schedules till then. Non-conference schedules, we do have some peaks. We can give a peek here. As previously reported, UMD men are at the Quick Trip.
Yes.
Quick Trip Holiday Face-Off in Milwaukee. They'll be in that tournament December, I believe it's 28th and 29th.
It's a Friday, Saturday after Christmas. I
believe
know.
It's actually a Thursday, Friday tournament.
Oh, I thought it was Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, still. It's
The
a weekend.
non-conference schedule, unconfirmed. That's still getting wrapped up. But I believe Michigan Tech is coming here for the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame game.
I can confirm that is the case, yes.
That is on the list. I believe we might see another Uper school in northern Michigan. I believe Bemidji State is also on the list for non-conference. We don't have to go to Lowell. There's that.
No, instead we go to Cornell.
Yeah, there is a trip to Cornell.
I think it's their season opener again too. So, which you don't know what you're going to get out of a team that hasn't. You've played for a month, they haven't played yet. So
yeah, the Gophers are back on the Bulldogs schedule. Everyone wondering about that. The Gophers are back on the Bulldogs schedule. As for the women, I believe that they're going to finish. Long Island is coming here now, I believe, this year after UMD went there. Sweet jerseys. That was
great jerseys.
Just when I was looking at the display of the Frozen Four of best jerseys, I looked at Long Island's and went, yeah, that's a beauty.
Good.
That's a nice jersey. So hopefully UMD will be wearing the whites here, so Long Island can wear those sweet blues. I believe Colgate is in the plant. There's some ECAC schools. Colgate and Quinnipiac are on the schedule. I believe Colgate owes UMD a return trip, and that might be this year. Maybe that's a new scheduling agreement. Quinnipiac's going to be an exciting series. UMD is going to be heading out there as well. Dates and times for all these are still TBD and getting worked out, but looks like the women are going to have a nice full schedule. No, Hockey East still is not.
Yeah. One thing I can confirm too is Saturday men's home games will all be at 6 p.m. next season.
Yes.
Except there is one weekend, I believe, during Bentleyville where they're going to play at 5 instead of at 6.
And there'll be one Friday game probably in the second half that'll be later.
CBS Sports Network.
Yeah, CBS Sports will take, and then the women, the doubleheader weekends, which I think there are 4 next season. The Saturday games will be at 2 to accommodate the earlier men's games. So they'll play 3 o'clock Friday, 2 o'clock Saturday.
All right. We know we had a lot more questions get in there, but I can't get to them all. I'm really sorry. Again, someone tried to sneak one in there on Isaac Howard. We should probably maybe talk just a little bit more about that. He still has not selected a destination. This is a joke, by the way, people, we don't actually expect Isaac Howard to select a new destination. This is a joke of some players who entered the transfer portal on Monday.
Like 2 hours later, they had a new place to go.
Yeah. You know, I don't know Isaac's reasonings why after 1 year he decided to enter the portal. I know someone asked me, was it because of a lack of communication that Scott hasn't met with the team. He didn't meet with the team immediately after the season ended, and not every coach does. Sometimes it's good to let things kind of breathe and such like that. I'm not sure Isaac Howard was the best fit for UMD when you go back and look at it. I don't know what his expectations were for this year. I know he said a lot of things about wanting to be a better defensive player, but I think everyone, us, the coaches, and even Isaac wanted to see more offensive production, and it just wasn't there for him this year. I know I had someone ask me early on in the season, wow, he's on the 4th line? Yes, he was listed 4th on the line chart, but Isaac Howard was not a 4th line wing. Him, Cole Spicer, Jack Smith, Luke Johnson, a guy we didn't touch on a ton in the podcasts here, who actually turned out to be a pretty good player as well this year, though just kind of got lost in the shuffle at the end of the year. Those guys were playing, 2nd, 3rd line minutes. They were an offensive force out there. So.
Well, and Howard's ice time numbers were I mean, because he was getting power play time.
Yeah.
And granted, UMD had like 2 power plays every game, but because he was getting power play time, he was a regular. If they were 6-on-5 at ends of games, he was out there all the time. So all of that, you factor all that in, he was getting enough ice time that he was not a typical fourth line guy.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions that you were asked, right, Matt, was, is this going to affect the way that UMD is viewed by other potential top-end first-round draft pick type recruits? And I think the answer to that is no. I mean, who knows what's in a kid's head, and maybe they do look at that. But, I mean, this is why the portal exists, and the hand that feeds you takes away from time to time, too. And for whatever reason, Isaac thinks that he'll have a better go of it somewhere else. And, you know, when you take players out of the portal, like UMD has the past couple of years, eventually you're going to give some players back to it, and Connor Kelly and Isaac Howard are the first 2 examples of that. But as long as the portal's there, you know, it's probably not the last that UMD will lose a player to going somewhere else.
And the portal's not going away.
Yeah,
and
someone
that gets
that
asked
was a
all
question.
the time. It's not. Listen. These guys this is 4 years of their life, and for the vast majority, I know Isaac Howard's an exception here, because he's going to likely have an opportunity to play in the NHL as first-round draft pick. I get that. But for the vast majority of these guys that are in the portal, this is about finding a new place to play, a new fit, a change of scenery, because this is the opportunity that they have. The highest level they're going to play at is where they're at right now. And they want it to be the best possible experience. If they're not getting it where they are, they've got the right to go somewhere else, and that has to be okay. And frankly, in Isaac's case, I know the circumstances might be a little different because he's a first-round pick, and he's going to play on likely from here. But he still has that right as well, and we need to respect that.
All right. We're going to wrap it up there. That's all the time we have for the Season 5 of Bulldog Insider Podcast. Again, check out Part 1 if you missed it. If you're an unorthodox guy, you want to listen to Part 2 before guy or gal want to listen to Part 1 before you listen to Part 2. Who am I to judge? Go check it out in your podcast feed. Bulldog Insider, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and rate us. For more Bulldogs hockey coverage, visit therinklive.com and DuluthNewsTribune.com. The latest on Bulldog hockey throughout the 3rd season, which is a Scott Sandlin phrase. Not my phrase. I appreciate Maura Kroll trying to give me credit for that in the off season here, but the Scott Sandlin phrase for all your 3rd season coverage. Stay tuned to all of that. Huge thanks to our sponsor, Essentia Health, for their continued support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast, going all the way back to season 1. Their support really means the world, as does all of you, our listeners who sent in questions for this week's episode, for our last one. We really appreciate all of you who listen each and every week. Again, it means the world that we get to do this. It's a little crazy, Zach, that we're wrapping up Season 5 here. So hopefully we will catch you next season for Season 6 of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. Thanks, everyone.